I can I welcome back to Talking Story. My name is John Minton. I'm so glad you joined me here today. I have got the review and I know you have been waiting for, which is Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. Getting into BookTube, Red Rising was one of the series I wanted to catch up on. So I was amazed that my timing worked out just right. I could do one a month and set myself up to have Lightbringer as a July read. So as soon as I got this, I plowed right through it. And you know what? There's so few things that just work out so perfectly. This 5-month journey through Pierce Brown's work, to see him progress as a writer and to culminate in this book for me was absolutely amazing. And I know you want to know why, so let's get right into the review. My reviews work on a classic 5-star system. We're going to go over 5 categories: world building, plot, characters, pace, and prose. Each category you can get anywhere from a 1/4 star to a full star. At the end, we kind of do a little bit of math together, and then we see what I thought of the book. So let's jump right in with world building for Lightbringer by Pierce Brown. Now, I've done a review of the first trilogy of Red Rising as I did this reread. I kind of held off on the second 2 books, kind of thinking I might want to talk about the first 2 books in this second chunk of 3 together. And I'm really glad I did, because I want to stay as vague as I can here about Lightbringer because it just came out. But I might refer back to some of the other two books in this second trilogy. So world building. The first trilogy wraps up so nicely, a lot of people don't even go forward, which is such a mistake. In this second trilogy, he broadens the scope by moving from just everything being from Darrow's point of view to a multi-point of view type of book. So it just broadens the scope, and he so masterfully chooses from these point of views people that from Darrow's rise in this Red Rising, Uprising, it's different colors in the hierarchy that this Uprising has just steamrolled over in a way. And he's got individual characters that now have a point of view from this uprising, this turbulent, roiling, turbulent uprising of the society, and how they're dealing with it and what happens. It narrows the focus down in that way. If you've ever seen that movie by Steven Spielberg, Schindler's List, and sometimes the Holocaust can just become such a tragedy and so sprawling. But in that one moment, this black and white movie, there's just that one moment with that little girl wandering in the bright red coat in this sea of black and white. And Pierce Brown can kind of do the same thing here by narrowing this turbulent uprising down to single individuals to represent the society at large and what's happening. So it broadens the scope of the world in such an individualistic, singular way. We have now access to points of view across the entire system. The Moon Lords out on the Outer Rim, the obsidians that have broken off into the asteroid belt and are pirating. It just continues to grow and grow. And with each growth seed that he plants, it just becomes more and more complex and grand and sweeping, all of it based with that Greco-Roman atmosphere, that Greco-Roman influence of the society. And he never loses that. It just absolutely sucks you in. If you've ever been sucked in by a grand sweeping space opera before, whether it be in literature like Dune or cinematically like Star Wars, this is exactly that. It's such a broad canvas, and this second trilogy just magnifies that. It's like it goes from movies to IMAX because of diversifying the points of view. One of the few problems I had in the first trilogy is everything was from Darrow's perspective. So something huge would happen in the uprising, and we would hear about it secondhand by somebody, say, running in and reporting to Darrow, oh, this just happened. Here we're able to jump around a bit through the system and get first-person points of view as these things are going on and happening. The world building just expands in such an amazing way. Not long ago, nothing's long ago for this channel because I just started, I put out my top 10 sci-fi reads. Something's going to have to move over because this absolutely has a universe and a broad world building appeal that is absolutely second to none. It has done nothing but expand in complexity and texture from book one to now Lightbringer. So, world building, welcome to the Gush Fest. It's not going to stop. World building gets a full star. Let's move on to plot. I want to stay very, very vague here because, again, this is a new book and I really don't want to spoil anything. So looking into the second type of trilogy as a whole, the first one wrapped up so well, so wonderfully with a bow. And now we start to see Darrow, who was carved and taken to red and carved and made into a heroic conqueror and warlord. Now it's like a dog that caught the car and they have to govern. They have to come through with these promises. And the second trilogy is kind of just that type of journey. And it all culminates so amazingly with Lightbringer. All the plot threads that were left off and dangling, and I say all because, again, we've gone to a multi-point of view, at the end of Dark Age, are picked up here. Lysander, Darrow, Virginia, Lyria, all these people that you wanted to check in with and see what's going on, you absolutely do. Like any Red Rising book, you have the absolute crush of defeat. You have the absolute euphoria of victories. And this, more than anything in the plot, gives you that Aristotelian perfect arc that loops back around to the beginning of the series when these were just boys in the Institute, running wild. This goes all the way back to that in such an amazing, beautiful way. The relationships that have built and cracked and rebuilt, the moments we have through this plot of Lightbringer, of these characters being in the same room that we've been waiting for so long. It's all there. Huge battles, as you would imagine. Individual duels that are so personal that you would imagine from a Red Rising book. It is all here. It all pays off in an unbelievable way. And it's just not a space holder or moving the chess pieces to get them all where Pierce Brown needs them for Red God, which is the big conclusion coming up hopefully very soon. It actually has its own through line and its own story and its own thrust of what has to happen for these characters. And the characters absolutely experience an arc from beginning, middle to end and change from the beginning of this book to the end of this book, just like they have every step of the way through these now 6 books. And I don't want to go any deeper than that. It is such an amazing ride to get this just as you read it, just as I don't want to give any more hints, just to say, if you've been waiting for it, if you want it, if you know the plot threads that were left at the end of Dark Age in that well of despair that we were in, this does absolutely, I thought Dark Age was one of the best books I've ever read at showing the chaos of combat. This absolutely does the same because it is a Red Rising book, but it does also bring the hope and the light that you would expect from the title. So it's everything you want. I don't want to spoil it for you, but I will say plot 1 star. Characters. If you're with me here by book 6, you absolutely know and love these characters. What I will say is, going on this journey in this way with Pierce Brown over 5 months, I have seen an artist grow as his characters have grown. At the center of all this maelstrom of chaos of the Red Rising uprising is Darrow. Darrow, at this point of this book, at this point of the series in Book 6, Lightbringer has moved on from, as you know, all the travails of Dark Age came from him. Basically, they had made a warrior, they had made a conqueror, they had not made a diplomat. Now it was time for him to lead. Now it was time for him to, along with Virginia, to govern. And he, in his rambunctious, larger-than-life self, thought he had all the answers. Runs off in his rash, brash way to bring the end of this conflict, and it just crumbles around him and brings about this Dark Age. Just like when he did not rely on his friends in the first trilogy, and he had to overcome that and learn and become a new person. We now have Darrow very much, if I would compare it to anyone in literature, we have not the brash warrior Macbeth at the beginning of the play. We have Macbeth at the end of this play, looking back over his journey and having more introspective, spiritual-like thoughts, such as tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays lighted fools the way to dusty death. He's such a different grown man. The moments in this book of him growing and realizing, and of course all the characters, there's Lyria has come into her own in such a way. I don't want to give too much away, but wow. And I do feel like there was a moment where there's some plot threads left hanging from Dark Age that were shifted and changed, but shifted and changed in such a beautiful character way for Lyria, where she chooses humanity. She chooses her own human nature and self, as opposed to the best intentions that hell can be paved with when you just want to get the job done. Virginia, every character is here. Some not as much. I would have loved to have seen more Victra, but I do think Red God is going to have so much of that, because we're heading to the culmination of this conflict, and she will be right near the center of that. I feel Severo, what a journey, what a heartbreak, what old characters you've been waiting for that you know popped up at the end. I won't even say your name in case you're a couple books back, but they pay off in such an amazing way. The characters, it's the deftness that he has grown these characters. There are moments in this book where these characters reflect and look at the sociological needs of society at large as they're the architect overall of what they're building. Spirituality, parenthood. It is not just once more into the breach, dear friends, come with me as a final battle. It is so much more on so many levels because of the depth and texture of characters that we have been on this ride for all 6 books, and it pays off in such an amazing way with Lightbringer, guys. Character, 1 full star. Pace. I've had a problem with pace with Mr. Brown a couple times in the past because there is such a frenetic, non-stop chaos of combat, tripping from one upheaval battle to the next. In this, he strikes the perfect chord of balance between those softer character moments and the maelstrom swirling around all of it, all of these individuals with the combat. It is paced so unbelievably well. Now, switching to a POV system, do we lose sight of our hero at times? Yes, we do. We do. And in Lightbringer, actually, I believe there's even a couple hundred pages where we're focused somewhere else in the system as opposed to just Darrow. But Mr. Brown so masterfully uses this time when we're away from our hero that oh my gosh, how can I do this without giving it so much away? Believe it or not, there is a growth in ability with Darrow, and there's almost a time cut that you needed for him to grow and be able to do that. So when you come back to him by the end of these challenges of this one volume, that he can overcome. He's had that time to nurture that and become that and do that. And it's because of the time cut and just exactly where it falls of focusing somewhere else in the system. So, yes, we do lose sight of him, but it's all for a reason, and it all pays off. And the other characters, their journey is so inspiring and just so readable that it goes by like this. You don't notice it, and just so I'm running out of superlatives. I wish I had more, but pace, 1 full star. That leaves us with prose. Now, I have described, I think in my review of the first trilogy of Pierce Brown's prose as like Neo-Sophocles. It's got the slang of a far futuristic society, and not only just the slang, but slang in different classes or different colors as we have in this series, as well as that Greco-Roman influence. So is the dialogue soaring? Yes. I mean, we have architects of a civilization here that are inspiring and reflecting. So is the dialogue soaring? Is it stylized? Absolutely yes. Do you know it's Pierce Brown? Is it recognizable as Pierce Brown? Absolutely yes. But from having read these 6 books back to back to back over 6 months, I can absolutely say that Mr. Brown it's either I've become more comfortable from reading 6 books in a row, or he has become more comfortable and at ease with his own ability and language. You almost track it just like the character Darrow. In the early books, it almost seemed like there was a young Turk bursting onto the publishing world, trying to show what he can do. It almost seems like he was trying to prove himself. By book 6 here, Mr. Brown is at such an ease with his toolbox when he pulls out the words that he needs to cut just right or salve just right. He knows exactly what he's doing. He's no longer having to reach for or try. He just is. And again, it might just be me from having read enough of him to be comfortable with it, or a combination of both, but I will not take away his growth as an artist. And I think it absolutely shows in the prose here, his comfort with the language. There was never a point in this book, and again, this book is high soaring dialogue. It is deep philosophical questions on a character level. It is sweeping grand battles, and never once, and I did a couple times in the earlier books of the series, do I have to look back and go, oh, wait, what was that? What happened? What? It just flows so perfectly well, and so there is such an ease with the language, which I think comes from growth of an artist, and Mr. Brown has absolutely nailed it by this 6th book. Prose, 1 full star. I rarely give 5 stars, guys. I could not find anything to even nitpick. It was everything I had hoped for and wanted and waited for. And I know I've only been waiting for 6 months because I'm getting on this bandwagon so late, but it absolutely brings everything to fruition in such an amazing way. Kudos, Mr. Brown. I read an awful lot. I have read an awful lot over the years. And rarely do I have to think about what from my sci-fi top 10 list am I going to take off to include a new series. And that is what I'm feeling right now. Thank you so much for stopping by and joining me here on Talking Story. If you like hanging out with me as much as I am loving hanging out with you, subscribe so you can come back and hang out again. Thanks so much for spending a little bit of time with me. If you did, I know you're a book people, and in my book, that makes you the best people. So now, as always, I am going to take some of the shackles off, and on the other side of this, I'm going to do a little bit of spoilery talk. So if you've already blown through this book, join me on the other side. If not, my name is John Minton. Thank you so much for joining me on Talking Story. Okay, I was one of the few people at the end of Dark Age going, the genius of Pierce Brown is if you were to completely flip the journey of Lysander and Darrow, people just love their Darrow so much, they would go, oh man, what a great infiltration. What a great, I mean, they peg Lysander as the villain, but he has the same type of arc and the same type of rise. And if you were just to flip them, people would, they're running in such parallel. These two characters run in parallel, doing to the best of their conscience, answering their questions the best to their conscience that they absolutely can on this rise of what they think is best for their society. And I thought it was so genius. Now, with Lightbringer, that two characters moving in parallel have now diverged. And what we have with Darrow finding a spiritual level and an introspective level and a maturity level in character, and we have Lysander starting to lose more and more of himself as he paves his road to hell with his best intentions of what he thinks the society needs, we have the birth of a true villain. And if you know Pierce Brown, you know he does villain so unbelievably well. I could name so many of them, the Jackal, Atlas, so many come to mind. But Lysander, we have been on this journey with him when he was a young boy in his mother's office at the end when Darrow storms in, and now to this point, so many years being honed by Cassius. Now to see him at this point, and you see this divergence of character, and you see Red God being set up by your obvious hero to root for. It was done so masterfully and so heartbreakingly for Lysander. There is one thing I can say, and that is Hail Reaper. Bring on Red God, because you have so well defined your villain on this journey. I am so enthused and so excited, and I do not know if you will see this review or not, Pierce Brown, but to you, my friend, the slow clap. Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much. Again, my name is John Mitten for joining me here on Talking Story. Like, subscribe, come back. We'll see you soon.